Snow drifted across the roads of Stonehaven, Colorado, covering everything in a white silence that felt like a warning. On the far side of town, where pine trees guarded the mountains like sentries, Mason Reeves sat alone in the living room of a rented cabin. 59 years old, back straight even when exhausted, as if discipline had been stitched into his bones. They said he cracked. They said the nightmares took his mind. They said he was medically discharged after a breakdown. They said he broke his own career with trembling hands and haunted eyes. He let them say it, because the truth was a mission wrapped in classified ink. Mason Reeves was still active duty, not retired, not discharged, not fallen. A 4-star general working under a name that had been erased from public record. They called it protection. He called it purgatory. The cabin door rattled against the wind. Mason didn't look up. The snowstorm was gaining strength, sighing cold air along the windows. His hands curled around a mug of coffee gone room temperature. He stared at the table where a photograph lay face up. Lila, 17 years old. His daughter, red-knitted hat, a smile that used to make him believe he could outrun war if he just tried harder. He hadn't seen that smile in months. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments where are you watching from. It helps more than you know. A sharp knock broke the silence. Mason stood, approached the door, opened it. No one, just a package on the mat. Plain brown, edges wet from snow, the hairs on his arms lifted. He brought it inside, tore the seal open, and a collection of papers slid out like a confession. Arrest report, Stonehaven Police Department. Charge, resisting trespassing, assault intent. Name, Lila Reeves. Mason did not blink. His breath did not change. The storm outside could not match the storm behind his eyes. He flipped the next page. A signature glared up at him. Sergeant Troy Maddox, Kendra's boyfriend. Mason's pulse moved like a countdown. He remembered when Troy first appeared. The swagger, the badge polish, the handshake too tight, like a dog tugging on a leash. The kind of man who loved authority more than he loved people. The kind who wore his uniform like proof that he could not be questioned. There were photographs. Grainy, poorly angled, clearly taken in a hurry. Lila in handcuffs outside a convenience store, snow on her hair. Her body language small. Her posture wrong. Troy's figure behind her, chin raised, smirk like a neon sign flashing the word control. Mason closed the envelope. Slowly, intentionally. He moved to the cabinet beneath the radio, slid it open, and revealed an encrypted transceiver disguised as an antique. He turned the dial. Static. Then a coded channel disguised as a weather report. This was his line to the world they thought he left. He keyed the mic, voice low and steady. This is Unit Alpha 9, Authorization 7-4, Victor. Immediate trace request. Subject, Sergeant Troy Maddox, badge number to follow, confirm routing. A pause. Then a response in a voice he recognized. One of the few voices he still trusted. Alpha 9, confirming. You are not authorized for civilian interference. Your cover cannot be compromised. Stand down. Mason glanced at Lila's picture. 17 years old. A life folded under another man's authority. Negative, he said. Override Protocol Delta, I am standing up. Silence. Then, if you break cover, the operation collapses. There is no going back. Mason's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Copy, he said. Let it collapse. He ended the transmission. He holstered a sidearm, then reconsidered. No, not yet. He reached under his bed, pulled out a storage case, opened it. Inside, folded with reverence, lay his old uniform, stars glinting faintly like constellations drawn in metal. He ran his fingers over the fabric. Closed the case. Not yet. He dressed in plain clothes. Jacket, gloves, boots meant for ice. He grabbed the keys. On his way out, something slid off the door frame. A second envelope. Hidden. He tore it open. Inside, scrawled in uneven ink, PTSD makes custody easy. The judge already believes you. Snap. No signature. He didn't need one. Mason walked outside. The snow swallowed his boot prints instantly. Stonehaven lay ahead. Small, cold, and ready to defend its secrets. He got into his truck. The heater coughed awake. Frost melted on the glass. The mountain road stretched like a path he'd walked before. Toward conflict. Toward danger. Toward the only person left in the world who mattered. He whispered into the windshield fog. You tried to bury me. I built a war out of the dirt. The truck moved. By the time Mason reached Stonehaven, the holding cells were full. Sergeant Troy Maddox was already waiting, and Lila's arrest report wasn't the only thing with Mason's name on it. There was a warrant, too, but it wasn't for her. It was for him. The sheriff's department in Stonehaven looked like it had been built to intimidate. A brick block of a building with floodlights brighter than judgment, and a flag that snapped like an accusation in the wind. Mason Reeves parked beneath the street lamp, breath fogging against the windshield as he watched officers shuttle in and out of the lobby. Snow fell in sheets, layering the world in white noise. He sat still for a moment, studying the police cruisers lined like teeth across the parking lot. His hands rested on the steering wheel, fingers relaxed, posture calm. That was the thing people never understood about him. They confused stillness for surrender. Inside the lobby, a woman at the desk looked up as he walked in. Her nameplate read green. She froze when she recognized him. The man the town whispered about, the general they said, went unstable. Her voice wavered. Mr. Reeves, you shouldn't be here. Mason nodded once. Where is she? She's... Officer Green cut herself off, eyes darting to the staircase where a door opened and boots began descending. Heavy. Intentional. Sergeant Troy Maddox appeared, smile curved like a hook. Mason, he said, stretching the name like taffy. Thought you were medically unavailable. He tapped his temple with 2 fingers, mocking. Head still holding together? Mason's jaw did not tighten. His pulse did not rise. He turned his head like a turret, slow, controlled. I'm here for my daughter, he said. Where is Lila? Troy leaned against the counter, casual arrogance wrapped in a badge. She's being processed. Charges are serious, might take a while. He clicked his tongue. Kids these days, no discipline, no guidance. An officer across the room watched the exchange with interest. Shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact. The town knew. The town always knew. They just didn't interfere. Not when a uniform told them to stay quiet. Mason spoke evenly. I want to speak to her. You can't. Troy's smile widened. She doesn't get visitors until arraignment. Judge signed off already. You know how it goes. He leaned in. Unless you want to talk about where you've really been, maybe the court would like to know. Mason took a step closer. Not aggressive, not threatening, just near enough that Troy had to tilt his chin up. Where I've been, Mason said quietly, is the only reason you're free to wear that uniform. Troy's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he laughed, mean and small. Behind them, a door buzzed open. Another officer poked his head out. Sarge, holding cell C, is asking for you. Says she wants to call her dad. Troy glanced at Mason. That's funny. She must have forgotten what the court order said. Court order. The words slid into Mason's gut like ice. He turned to Officer Green. What court order? Her hands trembled as she slid a document across the desk. Mason unfolded it. Restraining order. His name. Filed 48 hours ago. Signed by Judge Hendricks. He read the grounds for issuance. History of instability. Erratic behavior. Unfit to interact during ongoing investigations. Then one line, underlined. Documented PTSD diagnosis. A diagnosis he never had. A diagnosis that didn't exist in any medical record. It was fabricated. He looked up. Troy was already watching him carefully, waiting for the fracture, waiting for the outburst that would prove him right. Mason breathed in once. Snow. Pine. Cold air like clarity. He folded the paper. Thank you, he said to Green. She flinched like the words were gunshots. He walked out. Not in defeat. In calculation. Back in the truck, he sat still for a moment. Snow collecting on the hood. The silhouette of the station framed in his windshield like prey. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a sealed envelope. The one he never planned to use. The one marked with a code only 3 people living understood. He broke the seal. Inside was a single phone number. No name. He dialed. The voice on the other end answered instantly. Reeves, it said. I heard you burned cover. It was burned for me, Mason replied. I need extraction protocols and legal deployment. I'm invoking Article Black. Static crackled. A breath. Then, that article doesn't exist anymore. Command buried it. Mason stared at the police station. The lights, the badge-shaped power. It exists now, he said, and it's active. The voice exhaled like a man accepting a war assignment. Then God help Stonehaven. Mason hung up. He watched Troy walk by the station window, laughing with another officer, gesturing wide with the arrogance of a man who believed he controlled the room. Mason whispered, "Not for God or mercy, but for memory. You wanted a ghost. I'll show you what ghosts do." He started the engine. What Mason didn't know was that Lila wasn't just being held. She'd already confessed to something she didn't do, and Troy had the footage ready to bury her. Mason would need more than rank to save her. He would need the truth no one in Stonehaven wanted exposed. By dawn, Stonehaven's snowfall had hardened into a crust of ice. The sky was a slab of pewter, heavy and indifferent. Mason Reeves parked his truck outside a diner that sat at the edge of the highway like a forgotten memory. Darla's Junction, the only place open this early besides the sheriff's department. Inside, a handful of locals nursed coffees. Conversations died when Mason walked in. Eyes watched him from behind steam and suspicion. Stonehaven didn't forget scandals. It fed them like livestock. He took a seat at the counter. The waitress, Darla herself, wiped her hands on a towel. Lines around her eyes suggested she'd seen stories she never told. "You look like someone who already knows the answer he came here to ask," she said. Mason nodded once. "I need information?" Darla poured coffee without asking. "Information is expensive. Truth is priceless," Mason replied. She studied him. She'd heard the rumors. Discharged, unstable, PTSD. The marriage smashed like glass. She'd probably heard the new ones too. Restraining order, arrest report, his daughter's name on the docket. She leaned in. "You chasing something or running from something?" "Same thing," Mason said. A man slid onto the stool beside him. Young, buzz-cut, eyes darting. Local deputy uniform. He reeked of nerves. "Darla," the deputy muttered, tugging at his collar. "He can't be here." "Sergeant Maddox said—" Mason turned his head. The deputy froze. "I just want the facts," Mason said. The deputy swallowed. You should leave town, Mr. Reeves." "Why?" "Because Maddox already filed for a psych evaluation order. If he gets it approved, you'll be in a hospital bed before you get within 10 feet of your daughter. That was the game. That was always the game. Weaponize the rumor. Use the lie. Make it law." Mason's voice remained calm. "Lila confessed to something she didn't do." The deputy blinked. The silence was confirmation. "What did she confess to?" Mason asked. The deputy shook his head. I can't. My job—" Darla slammed a mug onto the counter. Coffee sloshed. "Your job is to serve and protect, not enable men who think the badge makes them God." The deputy flinched. He looked at Mason like a man standing at the edge of a cliff. She said she hit Maddox," he whispered. Mason's pulse stayed steady. "Did she?" The deputy's eyes flicked downward. "No. He grabbed her first. She tried to pull away. He said she resisted, but he's got body cam footage of something I don't know. It's edited, I think. He's done it before." Mason exhaled once, like a loaded chamber venting smoke. "What about the restraining order?" he asked. The deputy lowered his voice. "Signed by Judge Hendricks, on Maddox's request. Maddox said you threatened him, said you made a scene, said you had an episode." Mason stared through him. He had not spoken to Maddox in 6 months. He had not been in the courthouse in a year. He had not threatened a soul. The deputy's voice cracked. "You didn't hear this from me. If I get caught talking—" "You won't," Mason said. The bell above the diner door chimed. Another deputy walked in, scanning the room. The first deputy flinched. "I have to go," the young man muttered, sliding off the stool. "I'm sorry." He left. Mason finished his coffee, set the mug down. Darla leaned in. "Men like Maddox don't stop because you ask. They stop because they're made to." "I know," Mason said. She hesitated, then quietly, "Do you still have friends? From before all this?" Mason considered. His life before was classified, compartmentalized, burned by red ink and sealed orders. Contacting anyone meant pulling on threads that led to places the world wasn't allowed to see. "I might," he said. Darla nodded. Then call them. You can't win this alone. Mason stood. Thank you. He left the diner. Snow crunched under his boots. The mountains looked like teeth. He got into his truck, reached under the seat, and pulled out a second phone. Matte black, unregistered, humming with dormant power. He dialed a number that should no longer exist. It rang twice. A voice answered. Reeves, it said. Voice like gravel in winter. If you're calling me, the world is ending. Not yet, Mason replied. But Stonehaven might. What do you need? Access, Mason said. Files, judges, internal affairs, and a broadcast line that can't be traced. Silence. Then, you're going after law enforcement? I'm going after corruption wearing a badge. The voice exhaled. Then you need more than access. You need evidence. I'll get it, then I'll be ready. Mason hung up. The phone clicked silent. At the sheriff's department, Sergeant Troy Maddox leaned against the wall outside holding Cell C. Lila was inside, knees drawn up, staring at the floor. He smirked, tapping the bars with his baton. You know, he said softly, your dad can't help you. He's sick. Everyone knows it. And when the judge sees what you signed, you're going to juvenile detention, then foster care, then gone. Lila didn't look up, didn't speak. Maddox leaned closer, voice like poison. You should have kept quiet. Now, I own you. Back on the highway, Mason whispered to the road. You think I'm broken? I'm sharpened. He shifted gears and Stonehaven loomed. What Mason didn't know was that Maddox had already filed for emergency custody. Not of Lila, but of Mason himself. If the order passed, Mason wouldn't be rescuing Lila. He would be the one taken away. Snow hammered Stonehaven like the sky was collapsing. Mason Reeves drove through it, tires crunching over ice, windshield wipers smearing white ghosts across the glass. His thoughts moved with military precision, objectives, contingencies, exit routes. Find evidence. Expose the lie, get Lila back. He parked 2 blocks from the sheriff's department. Visibility was low. The storm would be his cover. Mason reached across the passenger seat, unzipped his duffel, and pulled out a set of tools that did not belong in a civilian truck. Frequency scanners, lock override picks, a compact thermal camera designed to pierce walls like an X-ray. He slid them into his coat pockets. Outside, an engine rumbled. Mason looked up. A patrol car idled near the corner. Deputy Walker, the young man from the diner, sat inside. Nerves jittered off him like heat. Walker rolled down his window. You can't go in there, Maddox is waiting. He wants you to make a mistake. Mason approached. Then I won't. Walker swallowed. I put my badge on the line telling you what I told you, but if you get caught with anything illegal, illegal is what they're doing, Mason said. I'm correcting. Walker ran a hand over his head. What are you planning? Something simple, Mason replied. The truth. Walker hesitated, then reached into his glove box. He handed Mason a key card. Worn, scuffed, labeled employees only. Mason accepted it. This will get me inside? It'll get you to the hallway by the evidence room, Walker said. After that, you're on your own. Mason nodded. Appreciated. Walker looked down. I never said anything. I never saw you. You didn't, Mason confirmed, turning away. At the back of the sheriff's department, snow banked against the door. Mason swiped the key card. The lock clunked. He slipped inside. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The hallway smelled of salt, sweat, and bad decisions. Mason kept to the wall, camera in hand. Thermal imaging painted the world in heat signatures. Blue shapes behind office doors. Orange silhouettes pacing. He reached the evidence room. The door had a keypad. Mason knelt, drawing out a small device, hooking it to the panel. Numbers flashed rapidly. A brute force cycle, military grade. The lock clicked. Inside, rows of shelves lined the walls. Files, boxes, hard drives, body cams. He moved fast. He knew what he was looking for. If Troy Maddox framed Lila, there would be video. He found the section labeled with case numbers matching the arrest report. A hard drive sat in an evidence bag. He opened the playback on a laptop mounted to the desk. Static, then video. Lila outside the convenience store, snow falling. Maddox approached her, voice raised. She backed up, hands visible, empty. Maddox grabbed her arm. She jerked. He shoved her into the cruiser. The camera shook. Then, a cut. The video skipped forward. Suddenly, Lila lunged. but her body stuttered unnaturally as if frames had been removed. Maddox stumbled back, acting like she hit him. The video stopped. The gap in footage was surgical, intentional. Mason burned every frame into memory. He copied the files to a secure drive of his own. Behind him, a voice said, "You shouldn't be here." Mason turned. Kendra stood in the doorway. His ex-wife. Eyes tired, mascara smudged, coat dusted with snow. Her expression wasn't angry, it was scared. "Kendra," Mason said. "You need to go," she whispered. "Troy. He told me you'd come. He said you'd break in. He said he'll have you arrested by sundown." Mason stepped forward. "Lila didn't do this, you know that." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know anything anymore." "You know me," Mason said softly. "You know I never laid a hand on anyone in this family. You know I never broke." Kendra shook her head, trembling. "They showed me paperwork, medical records, diagnoses. They said you were dangerous. They said if I didn't file the restraining order, they'd take Lila anyway. They said they had proof." "They lied," Mason said. "The diagnosis is forged. The records aren't real. I am still active duty." Kendra stared like she couldn't breathe. "You, what?" "I never left," Mason said. The discharge was a cover. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Troy's voice carried, authoritative and smug. "Kendra," he called her. "Where are you, sweetheart?" Her eyes snapped toward the sound. "Go," she whispered. "If they find you here," Mason placed a hand on her shoulder. Not forceful, not pleading. "I will bring her home," he said. "With or without you." He slipped past her, moving through the shadows like a ghost returning to the battlefield. Outside, he reached his truck. Snow blinded the horizon. His phone buzzed. The unregistered one. He answered. A voice said, "Reeves, Internal Affairs never received your Article Black request, but someone else did. Someone above them. Someone very interested. You have 36 hours to present evidence or Stonehaven falls back on Maddox's narrative." Mason closed his eyes. "Understood." "Reeves," the voice added, "whatever you're planning, finish it fast." The call ended. Mason looked at the files in his hand. The proof, the missing frames, the surgery of corruption. 36 hours, a storm outside, a storm inside. Mason didn't know that Maddox expected this, and had already rigged the footage with metadata that tied the tampering back to Mason's own laptop, setting him up as the suspect. By the time Mason tried to clear Lila's name, his own would already be on trial. A blizzard swallowed Stonehaven whole. Whiteout wind clawed at rooftops, and the mountains vanished behind curtains of ice. Mason Reeves drove slow, headlights carving tunnels in the storm. 36 hours. That was the deadline. 36 hours to prove his daughter's innocence, expose a corrupt sergeant, and stop a narrative sharpened to cut him apart. He pulled into an alley behind Hendricks County Courthouse, a building that looked like a mausoleum for the truth. Streetlights flickered. Snow stung like needles. Mason shouldered his duffel and stepped out. Inside, the courthouse was dim. Heating systems groaned like dying animals. He found the clerk's office and picked the lock, not by force but by understanding. Locks were puzzles. Mason had been trained to solve worse. He rifled through file cabinets until he found what he needed. Judge Hendricks' docket. Emergency motions, custody filings, mental health injunctions. Then he saw it. A sealed document stamped, "Emergency Psych Hold Request Subject. Mason Reeves filed by Sergeant Troy Maddox. Reason: unstable, delusional, harmful to minor status, pending signature." Mason stared. Maddox wasn't just building a case, he was building a cage. Footsteps echoed behind him. "You won't find the truth in there," a voice said. Mason turned. Officer Green stood in the doorway, the receptionist from the lobby, the one whose hands shook when she handed him the restraining order. She closed the door, pulse visible in her throat. "I know what Maddox is doing," she whispered. "I've known for months. I didn't say anything because—" She swallowed hard. "Because people who say something lose everything." Mason held her gaze. "You're saying something now." "Because he's gone too far," Green said. "He's trying to get Lila transferred out of county before trial. Once she's moved, evidence won't matter. The case will vanish." Mason placed the files into his duffel. "Where is she?" "A holding facility on the other side of town." He arranged it quietly. Said it was for security. Green's voice shook. It isn't security, it's burial. Mason nodded. Information aligned in his mind like chess pieces. Green, he said. I need every record tied to my alleged diagnosis. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. Already did. They're forged. All of them. I can get you the originals, but if anyone sees me help you, you won't be helping me, Mason said. You'll be helping the girl they're trying to erase. Green handed him the USB. Then I hope you can finish this. Mason slipped it into his coat. So do I. Before either could say more, a radio crackled from Green's belt. Be advised, suspect Reeves is active in courthouse vicinity. All units respond. Her eyes widened. He knows. Mason moved first. Out the back door. Into the storm. Snow blinded him. Sirens wailed somewhere behind. Mason reached his truck, tossed the duffel in, and slammed the door. He keyed the ignition. Then he stopped. A police cruiser blocked the alley exit. Lights strobed blue and red against the snow. Sergeant Troy Maddox stepped out. No smile this time. Just certainty. Mason got out of the truck. Slowly. Hands visible. You break into my evidence room, Maddox said, voice smooth as oil. You trespass into a courthouse. You stalk your own daughter after a court order. He tilted his head. This is textbook delusion. You forged the diagnosis, Mason replied. You doctored the video. You arrested a 17-year-old girl to punish me. Maddox's jaw clenched. Prove it. I intend to. You can't. Because every byte of that footage traces back to your devices now. Maddox's eyes glittered. I learned how to win from watching men like you. Men who thought rules mattered. Mason stepped closer. Snowflakes melted on his coat. You're not winning, he said. You're hiding. Maddox didn't blink. Funny. That's what they said when they discharged you. That you hid behind stars instead of admitting you snapped. The words slid across the snow like razors. Mason's voice remained level. My stars still shine. Maddox smirked. Not for long. As of 10 minutes ago, I filed for emergency psychiatric detainment. Once it clears, you disappear. And Lila, he shrugged casually. She'll adapt. Kids do. A heartbeat. Then a radio broadcast cut through the storm. All units be advised. Article Black request has been acknowledged at federal level. Repeat. Federal oversight incoming. Stand down until contact is established. Maddox's eyes widened. What? Mason allowed himself a single breath of vindication. You forgot something, he said. I'm not retired. Maddox lunged. Mason moved faster. No punches, no violence, just a step aside and a hand to the wrist, the kind of controlled maneuver that turned Maddox's momentum into humiliation. Maddox hit the snow. The wind stole his curse. Mason didn't gloat. He didn't speak. He got back in his truck. As he shifted into drive, Maddox shouted after him, Even if the feds show up, you won't get to her in time. She's being moved tonight. Mason looked at him through the blizzard. Then I'll be there first. He drove into the storm toward the holding facility, toward Lila, toward the moment everything would break open. Lila wasn't being moved to another county. She was being moved across state lines where Maddox had friends waiting. If Mason didn't find her in the next few hours, she wouldn't just be lost in the system. She would vanish from it. The road to the holding facility wound through the mountains like a vein of ice. Midnight pressed against the windshield, the storm easing into a brittle stillness. Mason Reeves drove as if the truck were an extension of his will. Headlights carving through the dark, engine humming like a heartbeat that refused to fail. 20 minutes later, he saw it. A low concrete building tucked against a cliffside, floodlights cutting spears through the snow. 2 patrol cars sat at the entrance. The facility wasn't built for processing, it was built for disappearing people. Mason pulled off the road, shut off the engine, and stepped into the cold. Snow crunched beneath his boots. He opened the back of the truck and unzipped the duffel. Civilian clothes came off. Fabric whispered. Metal gleamed. When he folded the coat aside, the uniform emerged. Deep navy, crisp, unmarred. 4 stars at the collar polished like the truth. He slid into it button by button, a ritual older than fear. The metal bars rested against his chest like memory. He took a breath. For the first time in years, he felt like himself. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed. A bored guard sat behind bulletproof glass, scrolling his phone. He didn't look up until the door buzzed. Mason entered the lobby, uniform catching the light. The guard blinked, posture straightening like his spine had been seized by instinct. May I help you?" Mason set his ID on the counter. Not the civilian one, but the classified badge. The one no one was supposed to have seen. It bore the seal of an agency whose name was redacted from existence. "I'm here for Lila Reeves," he said, "and I'm here to end this." The guard swallowed. "Sir, we have orders." "You have new orders," Mason said. "Stand down." The guard hesitated. Mason saw the moment his training remembered the hierarchy. Fear turned to compliance. "Yes, sir." He buzzed the door. Mason moved down the hallway. Through glass windows, he saw holding rooms, cells, paperwork shuffled by tired hands. He passed bulletin boards lined with warrants, some legitimate, most not. The scent of bleach and something like regret filled the air. At the end of the hall, 2 officers blocked a door. Maddox's allies. "Facilities closed," one said. Mason didn't slow. "Move." The officer stepped forward. "We don't take orders from—" Mason held up the badge. Their words dissolved. "Now," he said. The officers exchanged a glance. They stepped aside. Mason opened the door. Inside, Lila sat on a cot, knees tucked under her chin, shivering under a thin blanket. Her eyes lifted. Tired, scared, but still hers. "Dad," she whispered. Mason crossed the room, knelt in front of her. He didn't touch her at first, not until she reached out and grabbed him like he was the only anchor left. "I'm here," he said. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I told them you snapped. They made me sign it. I didn't know." "You didn't do anything wrong," Mason said. He cupped her face gently. "They weaponized fear. That's not on you." Footsteps echoed behind him. Troy Maddox stood in the doorway. His smile was gone. His confidence drained. He looked at the uniform like it was a specter. "You can't be here," Maddox said. "This is my jurisdiction." "Your jurisdiction is over," Mason replied. Maddox's hand hovered near his baton. "I'll fight this. I'll fight you. I'll bury you again." Mason rose, positioning himself between Maddox and Lila. "You can't win a war against someone who already survived it," he said. Sirens wailed outside, not local police. Black SUVs rolled up the snowbank. Men and women in dark tactical coats poured inside. Not soldiers, not civilians. Something in between. A woman with silver hair entered, flashing credentials. "General Reeves," she said. "Article Black is reinstated. Federal oversight is in effect. Sergeant Maddox, you are under arrest for evidence tampering, coercion, and unlawful detainment." Maddox staggered back. "You can't. This is my town. I run—" "You ran it," Mason corrected. "Now it stands." The agents cuffed Maddox. His protests echoed down the hall, swallowed by the snow. Lila stood leaning against Mason. "What now?" she asked, voice small. Mason looked down at her. "Now," he said, "we go home, and we rebuild truth." They walked outside together. Snowflakes drifted around them, soft, like the world finally remembered how to be gentle. The woman with silver hair approached Mason. "Your cover is blown for good," she said. "You understand the cost." "I do," Mason said. "Then, General Reeves, welcome back." It wasn't triumph. It wasn't victory. It was something better. Restoration. Back at the cabin, the fire crackled. Lila slept on the couch, wrapped in blankets, safe. Mason stood by the window, watching dawn bleed across the mountains. For the first time in years, the reflection in the glass didn't look like a ghost. It looked like a man who never broke. It looked like a father. It looked like a future. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.